Hello, beautiful soul tribe, and welcome back to another installment of Volume 2, Hiragana and Katakana, and this is Part 6 in this series. In the past 5 parts, we've been learning what's called the Gojuon, or the 50 sounds, and really remember, there's only 46. So now you can literally write anything in Japanese with what you've learned so far. But now you're going to learn some more sounds that can be added to your vocabulary. And the first sounds we're going to learn is what's called Dakuon, or voiced sounds, literally translated. So you don't need to learn to write any new characters. We're just going to add some sounds using the existing characters and something called Dakuten. Different types of marks you can add to the characters to make different sounds with. So with that in mind, buckle up and here we go. Alright, welcome back. In Part 6, we're going to pick up where we left off in Part 5 after we learned all of the 46 sounds in the Gojuon. If you remember, 5, 10, on sounds. So that's 5, 10, sound, or 50 sounds. We left off with, we learned the O column, and after we finished that, you have learned all the characters for Hiragana and Katakana, but you haven't quite learned all the different sounds yet. So there's some additional sounds you need to know about. And there are these marks that you add to each of the characters in some of the consonant sounds, and today I'm going to be remembering something called Dakuten with you. Dakuten in kanji is written like this. The first character means voiced consonant. The second character means mark. And there are 3 major ones I can think of them off the top of my head. The first one is the most common one, and it looks like our double quote. This can be used with the following consonant rows: K, S, T, and H. Okay, so the second mark looks like our degree mark, like 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Actually, it's hard to see that. There you go, something like that. The degree Dakuten goes mainly with the H consonants. So H can take a double quote or a degree Dakuten. We have another one in Hiragana and Katakana that uses the smaller version of Su, like that. And I'll show you how those are used later on in this lesson. So let's start with K. Okay, first we have Ka and Ka. When you have that on the K sound, That changes it to a G sound. It's always a hard G. Like in this case, this is ga. The next one we'll write is ki. And that changes it to gi. So we have hiragana on the left, katakana on the right, just like we've always had. Okay. The next one we're going to write is ku, and that changes it to gu. Gu. And we have ke, changes it to ga. And then finally we have ko, which changes it to go. Okay, so those are the G sounds. Okay, next we're going to learn what happens to S sounds. S and T, we're going to learn T next. S has two possible sounds. The first sound is sa, and when we put the Dakuten on it, it changes it to za. And if you remember the next one, there is no such thing as C, but we have our fish hook, which is she. And if we put a Dakuten on that, it becomes not a Z, but it becomes G. So in this case, the E sound becomes a J, but everything else is a Z. It's just something you have to memorize. Don't read too much into it. We'll be covering that later. Okay. The next sound is su, and su changes it to zoo. And speaking of zoo, I'll show you something pretty cool. So I'm going to teach you something else that we haven't gone over yet too much, but remember I told you that katakana is used to write foreign names and foreign words. And it's also used internally in Japan for names of businesses or companies. So let's take the name Suzuki, the makers of motorcycles and cars. Now, Japanese will write this company name in katakana like this: Su, Zu, Ki. But let's say that Suzuki is your last name in Japan. You will not write it in katakana. You will write it in characters. And the two characters that you're more than likely going to see for Suzuki are these two. So this first character is the word for bell, and the second character means tree or wood. So basically it means a wooden bell. That's what Suzuki means with kanji. So this first character is Zu, Zu. And then we have Ki. Suzuki. Now, when we're writing the equivalent in characters with hiragana, hiragana is going to be what we're going to use to write the sounds. You won't use katakana to sound out kanji. We'll use hiragana because these kanji is a Japanese word. So next on the list we have se, which changes to ze. Then we have so, turning into zo. Something I think I might have forgotten to teach you guys, speaking of so and katakana, there is something that I'm not sure if I went over or not. I don't think I did, now that I think about it. Is the letter N. We have gone over the N sounds, like na, ni, no, nu, na. But in this case, this is a standalone N. It goes on the end of words. And it looks like this in hiragana. Kind of like a little H. I'll write that again. Okay. In katakana, it looks like so. But remember, so is written like a dot like this, and from the 2 o'clock position down like that. The N in katakana looks like the same thing, but we're going from the bottom up. Kind of like, if you remember, she has 2 diagonal lines like that and comes up from the bottom up. And then we have tsu. Katakana has 2 lines going down and then coming down like that. So it's the same thing with so and in. We have so, and in katakana, if you remember, it's so, and then in is 1 mark and coming from up like that. Very similar, but you just have to look at how the stroke is, and you'll get used to it. The more you see it, the more you read, the more you'll get the hang of it, and you'll know it's an in and not a so. We'll use the word ma-n. So ma-n, so that's man. Now man in Japanese is a word that means 10,000. And there's a kanji that goes with this too. That means 10,000. Man. And if you're curious, 1,000 is a character that looks like this, which is sen, or sen. See, both end in. Okay, now we're on to T sounds with the Dakuten. First up we have ta, and when we add a Dakuten to it, that changes it to a D. So it'd be da. And here's another sound that it turns into. Remember, we have no such thing as T in Japanese. So instead we have chi. And when we put a Dakuten on that, that becomes G. Now if you remember, she also changes into G. So you might be asking yourself, what's the difference? Which one do I use for G? And the answer to that you're going to learn in the very near future when we start learning kanji. I'm going to tell you an easy way to remember that. You'll see. It basically comes from the sound that the kanji derives from. You'll see. It's super simple. So let me write this again. So we have da, and then we had chi. If you notice, the katakana is the same for 1,000, which is sen, but in this case it's G. Okay, now, there's no such thing as two in Japanese, so we make it su. And when we put the Dakuten on it, it changes that to Ju. Then we have te. That changes it to de. And then we have our to, which turns into do. So to recap the T's with the Dakuten, we have da, G, Ju, de, and do. Next on the list we have H sounds. First, we have ha, and when we put a Dakuten on it, that changes it to a B sound. Ba. Okay. Then next we have B. B. Okay. Next we have, remember our boomerang, our he. That turns into be. And then finally we have our ho, which turns into bow. Okay, that's it for the double hook Dakuten. Now we're on to the P sound. So we're going to have the same, we're going to apply this little degree symbol to all the H sounds again. So ha, with a little circle like that, changes it to pa. And what's interesting here, the katakana for ha is this. And the number 8 kanji, the number 8 for kanji is that. And it's pronounced ha chi. So it's funny how ha, the katakana, is the first sound in 8. And it's the same as 8. Okay. Okay. Next we have he. He with a Dakuten or a P turns into P. And we have hu or fu with a circle on it, changes it to pu. And then of course we have pa. And lastly we have po. Po. Okay, after trying to make this video a million times fit under a certain time restraint, I've decided to move discussion about the little tsu in Hiragana and Katakana. These little guys. I decided to move those to the next part. And if you're interested, the kanji for this feature, for the little tsu, it's called Sokuon, which looks like this. Soku. On. Soku. I'll write it in Hiragana here so you can see what it looks like. And literally that means assimilated sound. So on the next part we're going to be learning about that. We're also going to be learning about something the Japanese call yoon. And I'll write this in Hiragana so you can see it. Yo. If you look, you see a yo and a u together. That's the equivalent in English of writing a Y-O and a line on top of the O to make it a long O. So it's yo, yo. That's how they say a yo. And then, of course, we have an O and an N next to each other. And translated into English, it means diphthong. And here's the characters for it right here. That's yo, And then we have kanji for sound on. So that'll give us a lot to talk about on our next video. And then after that, we will be just about ready to start learning the 214 radicals. And that's when we're going to bring the Chinese aspect into it. We're going to be comparing radical charts. So there's lots to look forward to there. So thank you for stopping in and remembering with me. And I will see you real soon in part 7. I love you.